Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is my New York. Baseball is back. Opening day just 8 days away. Good time to examine the state of the game in the wake of a winter of discontent between the owners and players. And who better to consult than the man who's been talking baseball in this town for more than 40 years? Ed Randall. He's next. Ed Randall, good to see you, old friend. It's been too long.
Good to see you. You know, I've been a big fan of yours. It's nice to finally meet you. I watched you for years as a small boy, and it's nice to be with you.
Sure you did. And you cashed a check, didn't you? A contentious winter between the owners and players, but it often contentious between them. They finally had a contract. In summary, what happened? What was achieved?
Well, I don't know if I'd use the word achieved, but they came to a negotiated settlement. The largest ever increase for first-year salary. The most notable,
for the players.
The most notable achievement was that the way in which younger players will be compensated. There'll also be a draft lottery. There are provisions against teams tanking, intentionally losing games for better draft position of amateur players. And the playoffs will be expanded from 10 teams to 12 teams. Right. And there's a lot more than that, but those are the highlights.
The players were, it seemed there were two focuses, and you mentioned both. One was improving the pay of the younger players, right, which they got with that new $700,000 a year minimum, and some other things for the young players.
It's a South American economy in baseball. There are guys that are making incredible amounts of money, and then there are hundreds of players that are at the bottom of the pay scale.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but the other thing you mentioned was tanking, which was a real objective of the players in this negotiation. In fact, one of the negotiators, Max Scherzer, said tanking is poisoning the game.
Right.
And they seem to, as you said, achieve something in that direction.
But it's still going on in two cities right now. It's going on in Oakland, where they got rid of their cornerstone infielders. The Olsen, the first baseman, went to Atlanta to replace Freddie Freeman. Chapman, the third baseman, fantastic fielders, Tony, went to Toronto for a collection of unproven young players. And the A's are dismantling. They're looking to remove two of their best starting pitchers. They're going to be traded as well.
Mets got one of them.
Right, and there's still two more left. Yeah, they got Bassett, but there's still two others. And in Cincinnati, who last summer were actually in the pennant race for a period of time, they have decided that they're going to dismantle the team. It's such an insult to the fans.
Yeah. And it's an insult to the fans in Baltimore and Pittsburgh too, who don't seem to compete year after year.
Right.
And the players thought that by getting what's called the luxury tax, by getting it the amount raised, the teams can go higher before they incur a tax.
Right.
That would help, but it's so far only partially successful.
Well, and there are some teams like the Dodgers who really don't care about it.
Right. The
Mets have already blown past it now with an owner who is the richest owner in all of American professional sports.
Yeah.
And he himself called it the Cohn tax. Steve Cohn called it the Cohn tax. He doesn't care. This is a man worth somewhere between, $14 to $16 billion. So if their payroll is $300 million, they're at 280-something now. They don't care, and good for him.
Yeah. Could we have a drink with him after the show, you think?
If he's buying.
But on this tanking, it's really important. At 538, that data and analysis site did a survey last year. The payrolls last year, all 30 teams. They looked at them at the end of the year, and 538 found that roughly a quarter of the league, 7 teams, were spending far less than the median baseball payroll. 7 teams weren't, in effect, trying to compete. I mean, as you say, it's an insult to the fans who come and pay these really
exorbitant prices.
Yeah. Right. Well, I want to get back to that point you made about players. I think there's a perception out there among many fans and even the casual baseball observer that there's, what would you call it, a resentment of the players for these big, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. They're making all kinds of money. Do you agree? You see it that way?
For generations they've felt that way, this animus towards the salaries. You've got Aaron Judge right now with a salary arbitration hearing that might in fact take place, or they may settle beforehand, and the Yankees need to sign him to a long-term deal because he can walk out. He can walk out as a free agent at the end of the season, and so the numbers we hear, Tony, are the Yankees are offering $17 million. Aaron Judge wants $21 million. These are astounding figures for the everyday man, but that's the way it is. There's nothing that we read in the newspapers about the incomes of the owners of the St. Louis Cardinals and the Boston Red Sox and the Detroit Tigers and everybody else, but the salaries of the players are in the newspaper.
Right. The public never knows what the owner's bottom line is.
And they don't open their books, and they never will.
Except for one team, which is the Braves, because they're owned by a public company, Liberty Media.
And they had a nice year last year.
They did. Somebody looked at the books and found that the Braves made $105 million profit last year, and that was on a payroll of $149 million. They made $105 million profit.
And of course had the financial wherewithal to re-sign the face of their franchise, Freddie Freeman, who everybody had hoped was going to be the second coming of Chipper Jones, that he would have his entire career played in Atlanta, but they let him go even though they had this fantastic year financially.
Yeah, but I think I should point out, it appears from the reporting that they were determined to hold a contract for Freddie for 5 years.
Right, not 6.
And he wanted 6 or 7. And the GM held the line. I mean, they made him a big offer for 5 years, but he said, I have to have 6. So he's now going to be playing with the Dodgers. Right. And the guy coming in got 6 years. So they're spending about the same amount of money, well, maybe a little less. But it was a question of length of contract. And Freddie's 32 now?
32, yeah.
And the guy they got is 28. So. Right. But, there's a thing that, again, the fans and maybe casual viewers of baseball don't recognize. The short time of the average career of a baseball player. And in the last 5 years, 6 years, the median salary, or the average salary, I should say, has gone down in baseball.
Right.
Gone down $500,000 over the last, I think, 5 or 6 years.
Right, since 2015.
Yeah, since the Manfred years. And it's a reality that it's maybe hard to accept, as a couple of civilians, and you say, like you said about Judge, 17 million, 21 million, well, that's a lot of money. But I think it was the University of Colorado at Boulder years ago did a study of what's the length of a career, a baseball career, and
4 years.
I think they came up with 5.5. Mm-hmm. But the point is that 5.5 years is the average length of a career, and in 5.5 years, a player is bound to his club. There's no free agency yet. You don't get free agency till 6 years. Right. So it's a really slippery slope.
It really is. But let's also remember, these are the 750 best baseball players in the world.
Yeah.
And I always boil it down to this. If it was your kid who was, I'll never forget this, my first year in the minor leagues, our league president, New York Penn League, Vince McNamara, may God rest his soul, used this expression with me, they're touched by God. I never forgot that. And if it's your kid, you want to see him make the most amount of money he can possibly make. But yet there is this resentment about, oh, this guy's not worth that, or he's overpaid.
Yeah.
These are the 750 best athletes playing this particular sport in the world.
And once again, we know what one team profit was because they're public, and 29 others we don't know.
And 29 others we don't know. And during the course of the negotiations, the owners batted away the idea of players wanting to know about the franchise values, because the values, of course, have exploded. We're talking about an industry that is that has revenues of somewhere between 10.7 and 11 billion dollars. And now we have teams that are in the landlord business. They not only own their own teams, they own the surrounding area around the team. So the St. Louis Cardinals, when they built their new stadium that opened downtown St. Louis, it took a while because they had a lot of political, there was a lot of political pushback, the ballpark village. The Cardinals own that. The Atlanta Braves, to your example, same thing, having moved from downtown Atlanta to the suburbs. They own and they control that, and that's revenue. And the Oakland A's right now, who are teetering as to whether or not they're going to remain in Oakland or go to Las Vegas. Can you imagine 20 years ago we were talking about teams in Vegas? The A's want to build all around the ballpark, in addition to a taxpayer-funded ballpark. So the revenues are staggering, and we're not talking, and we haven't even talked about television. Baseball has just made a deal with Apple for games. They've just made a deal. NBC is back in the baseball business. They're going to do a package of 18 Sunday afternoon games before Sunday night baseball.
They're heading very firmly in the streaming direction,
which is a problem for people who, if you are an inveterate baseball fan and have been a baseball fan for generations, they are continuing to hide the games behind paywalls.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Yeah, there are many problems. Just a final thought on this perception of the players. I was talking to John Thorne, the eminent historian, baseball historian. What a Renaissance guy he is. Just a tremendous man. And his perception of that is interesting. He says, look, baseball is something we all grew up with, and we probably played it. And we look at these guys, and they don't look that much different from us. We look at them and we say, geez, we could do that, and we'd do it for a lot less. Can't say that about the NFL, and you can't say that about the NBA or the hockey. But baseball, you can kind of have the illusion that, hey, these kids are playing a game that I could play, and boy, I'd do it for a lot less. It's an interesting take.
But it's true. And the joy of baseball, the romance of baseball, is that everybody that has watched the game in their lifetime, at one point in their life, grabbed a bat.
Yeah.
Men and women grabbed a bat at some point in their lives. And it's every man, to use an old expression, it's every man's game. You watched a knuckleball pitcher like Phil Niekro throwing what looked like just floaters, and you thought, man, I could grab a bat, I can hit that.
Sure.
And that is one of the things that makes baseball so unique. The idea, oh, I can do that, or when I played, everybody, when I played.
Right.
And we talk about how it is generational, passed down from generation to generation.
Exactly.
The romance of having a catch with your dad. Oh my goodness, it's like no other sport.
Field of Dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the state of the game. There's a lot wrong with the game as it's being presented nightly in both leagues. Sound off. What's wrong with the game?
Well, we just recently got news that they are going to reinstall for this season only, that it will be the last season of what's being called the ghost runner. If the game is tied after 9 innings, for every half inning that begins, it will have a runner at second base.
Yeah.
To
like we had last year.
Right. This will be the third and final year thank God. I thought they were going to kill it, but now they've added it, and it's an abomination. I was at Yankee Stadium when they're playing the Toronto Blue Jays. The game is tied, and in between innings, as they're going to the top of the 10th, I'm sitting in the press box, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no, don't, oh God, no, please, they're not going to. Out comes a guy in a powder blue uniform, runs out to second base. Guys are throwing to first base, the grounders in between innings, and we begin. And in the flash of an eye, a ball goes past Aaron Judge, one bounce to the wall, the guy scores, Toronto pitcher comes out, Yankees have a runner at second base, 1, 2, 3, game's over, go home.
Well, I don't like it, but I kind of think that if they feel they've got to have it, which they obviously do, why not start in, why not start it, like, say, in the 12th inning? Give them the 10th and the 11th.
I agree.
If they can't do it, then
right.
Bring out this ghost runner.
I feel exactly the same way as you do. They say in reinstalling the ghost runner, it's for health and safety concerns.
Yeah, get the games when you're doing especially when you're doing a doubleheader, which there are going to be more of this year.
Yeah, but fortunately 9 innings and not 7. Don't get me going there.
Oh, please, no, I'm with you on that. But there are fundamental things wrong, and they've been wrong for years. There's very little. It's a bit of a hyperbole to say, but there's no action in the game. There's what have been referred to as 3 true outcomes. Talk about that.
Right.
Which is the 3 true outcomes is nothing's happening.
Right, are home runs, strikeouts, and walks. So the Yankees, because they're overly right-handed in a ballpark where they should have a lot of left-handed hitters, which historically they have done, home run hitters that bat left-handed, and they go out and one of the players they acquire last summer on the trading deadline is a outfielder from the Texas Rangers named Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo is the epitome of the 3 true outcomes. I think the percentage is something like 47% of his at-bats, almost half his at-bats, Tony, end in a strikeout, a walk, or a home run. The Yankees are playing the Boston Red Sox in a winner-go-home wild card game last October in Fenway Park.
Right.
The lineup that Aaron Boone posts has Joey Gallo batting 4th. Joey Gallo was hitting 160. You are a lifetime Mets fan, and you used to make fun of Dave Kingman.
Yeah.
But at least Dave Kingman was hitting 220 while he was hitting moonshots at home runs. This is astounding in the way in which the analytics crowd, I'll be polite, the analytics
you don't
crowd
have to be polite.
Choked no, we're on public TV. They have choked the life out of the game. I miss the drag bunt. I miss the sacrifice bunt. I miss the hit and run. I miss hitting to the opposite field. I miss the run and bunt. I miss all that stuff.
And everything you just cited, Ed, is action.
Right.
We got games that are running 3.5 hours, sometimes longer. There's nothing going on. There's strikeouts, go sit down. Walk, go to first base. You don't even have to throw the pitcher. Home run, okay, exciting, but how often does that happen?
But they've also devalued the home run.
Yeah.
Because you got to hit the ball in the air. This is what they're teaching, even at the high school level. There is the death now of ground balls.
So you're sitting there at home watching, or you're at the stadium, for 3.5 hours, and basically none of that stuff is going on that you talked about, the bunt, the stolen base, the hit to the other side, because we've got something called the shift.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the things that just has to go. They got to do something. You cannot do that.
And it will next year. They're going to ban the shift. No, it's in the agreement. They're going to ban the shift. You got to have 4 infielders on the dirt, 2 on each side of the bag. So you're going to have that. But the analytics crowd were not alive when Rickey Henderson took a lead at first base in New York for the years he was with the Yankees, in Oakland, generations before with Maury Wills. where Maury Wills would take a lead at Dodger Stadium in the early 60s, and the crowd would be yelling, "Go, go, go." With Rickey Henderson, there was a buzz in the crowd. On my radio show on Sirius XM a few months ago, I had my friend Tim Raines on, who's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, one of the preeminent stolen base artists of his time. Had a season of 88% success rate stealing second base. And I said to Raines on the air, if you were playing today, they'd anchor you at first base. You wouldn't be running, because they have this mentality of, we only have 27 precious outs, Tony. We can't take a chance on a guy getting thrown out, even though we don't have the great catchers that we once did. And I told Raines, I said, you'd be standing on first base. That's the soul of the game, is it not?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just tragic, choosing my words very carefully, it's tragic that all of these elements that are central to the heartbeat of the game have been stabbed to death.
You mentioned your show on Sirius, the name of which is?
Remember When.
Okay, that's on Sirius Radio. Ed, of course, did Talkin' Baseball for all those years here in New York. And you founded a charity, or co-founded a charity, that has brought you in great, very close contact with a lot of the minor leagues. And there's a whole issue there with baseball, MLB, having just basically tossed aside 40 minor league teams. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that a little.
Well, first of all...
Well,
go ahead.
And also tell me about a little bit about the charity, but tell me about the...
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you about the charity. I'm a prostate cancer survivor, and prostate cancer in its earliest stages has no symptoms. And through God's grace, I came out on the other side, and came to realize that the time in which I was at the time in which I was diagnosed, no symptoms, and was operated on, and the cancer was removed. And I said to myself, you know what? There could be tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of guys out there like me walking around feeling fine, thinking they were fine, when in fact they were time bombs. So
you started this charity, and what's it called?
Fans for the Cure. We're at fansforthecure.org.
Okay.
Dedicated to prostate cancer awareness and education.
All right, and tell me about the minor leagues.
So I spent 7 years in the minor leagues broadcasting, and have had a lot of contacts there with league presidents, owner-operators and such, and thought, you know what, minor league baseball is an unserved constituency. 40 million fans going through the turnstiles in affiliated minor league ball, adding another 10 million to that from independent teams. 50 million fans out there. We need to get to these people. So for 13 years and 1,200 ballparks, we handed out material about prostate cancer awareness and education, telling people there's a 99% cure rate if prostate cancer is detected early. For the love of God, just please go to the doctors.
All right, so tell me about what's going on in the minor leagues.
So what's going on in the minor leagues is that the commissioner established this program called One Baseball, that baseball will be his office of the commissioner would be the central nervous system for all baseball, from Little League and Babe Ruth and high school ball and college ball and professional ball, all the way to those who get inducted into Cooperstown. MLB would have the authority over that. So minor league baseball was being run out of an office, independent, in St. Petersburg, Florida. So Major League Baseball, they have an agreement with the minor leagues, which expired in December of 2020. They could not come to an agreement. And so MLB basically swallowed the minor leagues and said, we're now going to run this. And so they took 160 teams and reduced them by a quarter to 120 teams, told the major league affiliates they could only have no more than 4 minor league clubs. The Yankees at the time had 6. And then also, let's reduce the draft to 20 rounds. So you'd never see a Mike Piazza, you'd never see a Keith Hernandez, you'd never see an Andy Pettitte, guys who were drafted after the 20th round. So in those cities that lost their minor league teams, some of those cities had, as a replacement, a college league. And MLB has vowed that they're going to put a form of baseball back into all of those cities.
We got less than a minute left. There are I think four teams suing MLB.
Yeah.
Four owners saying basically you killed the value of my property, my franchise.
Exactly. In Vermont, the Vermont Lake Monsters it played in the New York Penn League, and another team in that league sold for about $8 million. And the owners of the Vermont Lake Monsters, they did sell the team, but they got about $1 million. So to your point, it did kill the franchise value.
And Senator Bernie Sanders
has
already, I think, introduced a bill to
strip baseball of its antitrust protections.
Yeah, not going to. I think politically that's not going to go anywhere. But this is the kind of emotional emotional reaction you get when teams in your hometown, Burlington, Vermont, have been
wiped out.
Annihilated. Ed, it's great to see you. It's great talking baseball with you.
Big fan of yours for many, many years.
Yes.
Many years.
Yeah, stop it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And we could do this for a long time, and I think we should, but we got to find another
We got nowhere to go.
We got find another note. Ed Randall, nice to have you with us. Nice to have you with us. We'll see you next week when we analyze, on the night before the opening of the new season, we analyze the chances of the Mets and the Yankees. Thanks for watching.